So I'm really pleased, as usual, to have Alavari, my friend from our Quran class. Alavari is an atheist, but he runs the Quran class, which is fascinating by itself. And we have these weekly discussions about life and how to live it well, hopefully. So, Alavari, you've just been rushing back from somewhere or something? What's happened? How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thanks. I'm actually laid up in bed. I managed to injure my foot, so yeah, not been rushing around too much today, but hopefully I'll be back on my feet soon.
Oh, see, that's the thing about it's important to ask these questions. Sometimes, like, people just we live in different worlds. Like, we could be doing the Quran class and nobody'd never know what's happened to your foot. And it's important. So we'll do a bit of chit chat at the end about how's life and stuff like that. That's really important. This is actually how our live stream ideas started in the first place. So you don't want to miss that crucial thing. But for those people who aren't interested in our, how's life skills, because I think it's a very important skill that we talked about listening to each other and being interested in each other's lives. If they're not so interested in that, I want to talk about this, which might lead you to that anyway. And that is how to find happiness, a step by step guide from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so we don't necessarily have to believe. I think Alavari, I'm not sure what your perspective is. Perspective, I think is the word, on Hadith and sayings of Prophet Muhammad if they're historically accurate. But I'm more interested in the wisdom. Does the wisdom add up? Is there a better way to finding happiness? Is there some insight that's useful? That kind of thing. So I'm just going to quickly whiz through some of the basics here, and then we'll get into the discussion. So Prophet Muhammad said, I think, I believe, you will not enter paradise, and I put brackets, happiness. Paradise and happiness are not synonyms in ways. In this life and the next. So I'll be talking about how do we know like paradise in the next life means paradise in this life. Um, until you have faith, and you will not have faith until you love each other. Shall I show you something that if you did, you would love each other? And then he answers the question, spread the greeting of peace. And so amongst yourselves. So I want to whiz through some of the ideas, but the first thing I want to get across is some people think that the Quran or sayings of Prophet Muhammad are just magical ideas that don't have any basis in psychology or reality. And I want to get away from that way of thinking. Because if you think everything's magical, I don't think you apply Islam very well. So I'm going to whiz through the rough ideas so I can give Alivar a chance to talk. So here goes, something like this. So first of all, without getting into too much detail, the Quran does talk about this life is a reflection of the next, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's not just a belief. There, you can logically think about it. We are always going developing into higher forms of life, like the baby in the womb to the human being outside the womb. And if you're sick inside the womb, like your mother smokes, that's going to affect you outside the womb. Things like that. It's just a brief idea. So that's the kind of explanation as to for people who think paradise when Prophet Muhammad is talking about paradise in the next life as if it's something to do with just the next life. No, it's very much to do with this life as well. um but let me just whiz and then let me whiz to the main point, and then I'll talk about this greeting that's actually quite what's the word, common or whatever between the Abrahamic faiths, but I'll talk about that in a second. um the key idea, I think, in this teaching is that if you have love for other people, then you become open minded, and then you become more open to truths. And truths are not just useless academic ideas, they are ways in which you navigate the world. So, like, I watch lots of videos, TED Talks, talks by specialists about on happiness, and they talk about things that are counter the common beliefs in the West, at least, which is like if you give stuff to other people, that makes you more happier. Like there's an experiment on, like if you buy coffee for other people, that's going to make you more happy than buying coffee for yourself. things like that. So this is about start opening your heart to love, and I'm going to talk about something called I'd like to describe as indiscriminate love. I like to have weird phrases, maybe people remember them better. Indiscriminate love rather than transactional love, which is more common nowadays, I think. Indiscriminate love leaves you to be open to ideas for more people, and then you can learn from more people and more places. And often the truth we need is from the places we least like. So we need to open our minds more rather than being what we call, what's the word? Echo chambers where we're not really learning much. And then when we learn more about the world, we get this wisdom that enables us to be happy. Alavari, I love sharing ideas with you, and I think you're really a thoughtful person. Just what are your thoughts so far?
Well, I would say that when we take a Quranic teaching or for any holy text teaching, one concept that I find useful is the levels of understanding. So just because we may have understood it at our level, and even that I would question, because I think the posture of a truly humble spiritual seeker is to always, in a sense, be confused, be aware of our limitations. So when we provide a certain solution, like a doctor providing medicine to someone, I mean, who are we to provide that medicine? It's that it's almost that almost I almost recoil at that in itself. We obviously want to help people. We don't want to see people suffer needlessly. If we've gained some experience, we can share that. But I'm generally quite allergic to people offering, here's the pill, here's the red pill, here's the solution, here's the answer, and clothing that in the hubris of, oh, this great prophet, oh, this great religion. Well, okay, fine. The religion may be great, the prophet may be great, but that's got nothing to do with me. I'm not going to be dragging, even if I was a Muslim, I'm not going to be dragging and possibly risking polluting whatever greatness there could be with my interpretation of it. Even if I'm waving the book and saying, pointing to the verse, we may not have understood it correctly. Who knows if there's only one correct meaning? And I don't think there is. I think Islamic teachings very wisely warn us of levels of meaning, 70 levels, deeper levels than a human could possibly comprehend all at once. And also, we're all quite different. And I think the best teachers speak in accordance with the level of their audience. They don't give the same message to everyone. And I think spiritual growth can often best be obtained by finding one's mirror, finding a spiritual mirror, finding a soulmate, finding a guru, finding a teacher, finding a sheikh, however you want to put it, and being in that private way rather than let me get on a pulpit and tell the world what they need to hear. So when we talk about this life and the next life, I personally, all I can do is share my interpretation of it. It may sync with other people's, it may not. For some
Sure. So
people,
I don't want people to. That's what I was trying to get to earlier on. Like whether you believe in Prophet Muhammad or not, or whether you believe this, and even like who cares about my? It's not even like I'm not saying accept my interpretation. In fact, the whole discussion I want today is let's discuss this. This method. Is there any value in it that we can get to happiness? So piece by piece, what do you think about the greeting of peace I forgot to mention is a common one between Jews, Christians and Muslims is assalamu alaikum, or the Jews say assalamu alaikum, and the Christians say, well, in the West say peace be upon you now, which is the translation of that, and it's supposed to mean not just empty words but without getting into too much, but there is a saying of Prophet Muhammad that a Muslim is one who your hands, tongues, and something else, can't remember, are free from or safe from. So basically, you're free, you're safe, and you from when you wish something like peace be upon you, you really mean it. You're not going to attack them. You're not going to say bad things to them. You only intend good for them. So I suppose my first question, Alavari, is do you think if you love some people, you're more open to ideas. If you hate them, we resist more from learning from them.
Yeah, I think that that's quite easy to answer psychologically. I would agree. I think human psychology and human nature, if we begin from a posture of antagonism and a posture of hate, but it doesn't even have to be hate. As I was saying before, like, if I can finish my first answer,
Sorry.
if even if someone comes to you and saying, listen, Khalid, here's what your problem is, the West, here's what your problem is, here's the solution, you immediately invite them to put their defenses up. So that's not what I want to do. And I don't think that's what teachers do, true spiritual teachers and the really effective ones. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. The student has to be ready,
I
first of
love
all.
that.
So
Yeah.
I'm very allergic and aware of dispensing advice pellets in this way. All I can do is share my experience, and just sharing that. If that syncs with someone, they're going to pick up and run with it. It's not. You can't. I don't think you can make someone fall in love with an idea
Sure. So I want to
with
focus
good faith.
on,
Yeah. So
yeah, I want to
the,
focus
the
on
the
the
idea of
value.
paradise. So for example, the idea of paradise and in this life and the next life. Now, I'm sure for some people that's literally true, or they, in their reality, in their perspective, they literally believe that their soul is going to persist in some other life. That's not how I perceive it, and I don't think there's some kind of a sense where I agree the majority of Muslims believe something, but as we know, the majority is never a guide to what's right or what's wrong. So that's neither here nor there, even within Islamic teachings, and the Quran
Mm,
itself says this. So um, I don't think it's helpful to. I don't buy into the idea that the core Islamic teaching is this, and then AJ has this his independent belief. I don't think. I think that's a road, or indeed any one person, Khalid, or anyone has its own. I think Islam and all true religion and spirituality is first and foremost a personal endeavor between the divine and the individual, rather than trying to haughtily or hubristically
sure.
change a
So I'm
population.
going to even let's narrow this conversation even more. Like, forget the next life. Pretend we're
No,
or
I didn't want to. That's what I'm coming to. Sorry, if I can just finish
oh,
that
go on.
point. I don't even want to
Yeah,
forget
go on.
that. For me, I have no problem speaking of God and speaking of the afterlife because I interpret those in a certain way. The
Mm.
Sufis say, die before you die. So
Oh,
to be born into a new life is to be born into, and Christians say, I'm born again in Jesus Christ, my Lord.
yeah,
It's not that I dispense with this body and my soul goes to another dimension and lives in the clouds or whatever we may want to picture. It's just that we are born into a new way of seeing the world,
yeah.
with it
I love
in the
that.
same
Yeah,
body, in the same lifespan of 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, whatever it may be. So certainly, I think you will not enter paradise, happiness, until you have faith. Certainly, I think you will not see that new way, that unity, that cosmos, God in everything. Have that, living with zikr. You won't see that. You won't be able to appreciate that paradise until you follow the Islamic way of taqwa, of submission, of having these practices and becoming a spiritually transformed being. I believe that in a certain way. And that doesn't require me to believe that there is some kind of consciousness that persists after the physical body, the heart stops beating and the brain stops, the nervous signals. So, yes, certainly, I think I do agree that having a spiritual transformation, if that means a faith, a religious faith, or if that could mean a
mm.
humanistic belief, whatever that means. Yes, we all need to die before we die. We all need to die to the ego, and that will lead us to a happier way, a more fulfilling way of living life.
Yeah, I love that. I think the idea of birth and death and rebirth within life is a common idea within many religions, and I think sometimes they might have, let's say, changed in form. I think, for example, the idea of in Buddhism, what they call it, reincarnation. I think the original idea, in my opinion, was that. Um, it's similar to what you find in Christianity, like being born again and things like that. So you have to constantly supposedly die, just to clarify for people who might think you literally have to die before you die, you have to let go of ideas that you think are really important for your ego. So, for example, I really need an expensive car to be happy because I need other people's approval. And if you let go of that, I think, let's just say, you become more free. You get a more wider perspective of real happiness and things like that. So you let go of the need to please people. It might not be a car, it might be something else, who knows. Um, so I love that. Um, yeah. So that's I think that's a really interesting idea. But I kind of want to see if I can work through this process and to see. Um, I suppose what you've just said there is that although this is I mean, or what you've said there has made me kind of want to explain that although this is a process, there are other side things that are useful, like the idea of knowing that you have to let go or sacrifice things to live a fuller life, for example. But I think an easier way to do that is, instead of being scared of, I think love is powerful. Is what I'm maybe that's one idea I want to get across. Is like when you have love, you okay. So let me explain this. Let me put it this way. So we were talking about this idea of you need to die before you die. You let go of certain ideas that are holding you back. But how can you do that? Like, why would you do that? What's the pull? And I would say the pull to to move forward is potentially love. So if you have love for other people, you might sacrifice your need to buy an expensive car or some whatever it is, so you can serve more people or help more people. You have this love for other people. You need that thing to push you forward. How do you feel about that? Is that like okay? How do you feel about my interpretation of the dying before you die? And then how do you feel about my suggestion that love is a way of enabling you to move forwards, to let go and sacrifice and die before you die?
Yeah, I agree with both quite strongly. Dying before we die is refers to, as you say, dying to the old self, dying to the animalistic, the lower base self, the comforting illusions and the comforting desires that we may have, the way that we've always done things. And it could be traditionally, generationally, going back to our ancestors and trying to break that pattern and having a more humble posture that can help us to question some of our base assumptions. So I think dying to that self, and it's a painful process. It's not. It really is. I mean, the Sufis, spiritual seekers throughout history have compared it to heartbreak, compared it to losing a love who just comes into your life quickly and then vanishes, and you spend the rest of your life, you know, heartbroken, wandering the mountains and the desert. That imagery is not, I think, is quite appropriate given the strength of feeling that's required. Um, uh, the Layla and Majnun, that story, famous story from um, like Persian Sufi history and Arabic history, that I think is quite apt for it. So it's not an easy thing to do, and that's why you need love, as you say, indiscriminate love or unconditional love is, I think, a
Oh, that's a better
prerequisite.
word.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Majnun in that story, he's so disconnected from Layla. He doesn't know where she is, and then he just starts imagining if a dog comes by, he's begging and he's sort of forlorn on the ground by the street. He's just like a dervish basically, um, in rags, smelling, just surrounded by fleas. But even if a dog comes by his path, he sees that dog. So maybe that dog at some point, if I treat that dog well, maybe that dog will find its way somehow randomly to Layla. And when it finds its way to Layla, I want the dog to be healthy and to not be angry and not be rabid. So let me treat that dog well. So I think that gives a hint of the
fascinating.
seeing God in everything. If there's a stream, if there's a wind that comes and there's flowers on on the scent of the wind, he imagines, oh, maybe that wind would have passed by Layla at some point. So I think that for me is a very tangible, a very powerful imagery of the kind of approach a spiritual seeker would need to truly break the ego and die and be literally prepared to die before, like Mansur
Mm,
al-Hallaj. We don't, when we say we see God in everything, God is closer to us in our jugular vein. That's that kind of strength of feeling is, I think, what's needed to motivate us into this spiritual transformation. It's not just saying the Shahada, accepting Jesus, going to church. It can't just be that. It can't just be a change in the outward behavior. It has to be a
mm.
change, almost, in ripping our heart out from our chests and finding a new one to put in there.
Yes, I love that. I love that because Claire, the secular Quranist, has been making some comments, and I feel like could like we could weave that into it. So one thing I think maybe she said, "What is the advantage of thinking we are already dead?" I think maybe with all this kind of metaphorical talk, it can be quite confusing. So I don't think we're saying we should already be dead. In fact, I'm saying, and then you can share what you think about this whole dying before you die thing. Um, it's uh, it feels like death every time we let go of something we think is really important. So, for example, Claire feels like she wants secular Quranism to be successful or something, right? And if she lets go of that, like I have to have that, then I think she'll find a newer freedom on the other side of it. It'll feel really painful. It's like, oh my God, my whole world, my whole self worth and everything depends on this. And it really feels like death. And if you let go of it, then you come out more alive. It's not just feeling like dead, being dead. How do you feel? What do you think? Like, I mean, what do you think about Claire's comment? What is the advantage? Can you see that on the screen? What is the advantage of
Mhm.
thinking we are already dead? What would be your thoughts or response?
What we've been talking about for the past 5, 10 minutes, the breaking of the ego, the liberating of our perspective. If we're already, I think it's a hadith from Muhammad, which I quite like, is um, that people are asleep, and when they die, they wake up. So we're already, and Jesus also said this: let the dead bury the dead. When he's referred to following, yeah, some people are already dead. They're walking around, but they're already dead. They don't know it. They're just following the ritual, following the rote, following their animalistic desire. Rumi said, if I was if I was the plaything of every desire and every feeling that pulls me this way and that, I wouldn't be a wise man, but I'd be a fool. These kind of people, that default mode of being, if we just follow that without a spiritual perspective, without a cosmic perspective, without a guru to come and kind of shake our foundations a bit, like Shams did for Rumi, uh, that's that's going to impact our ability to function truly as a human being. We're just limited then. We're just following the factory line, following the path that's already set for us. We don't, we'll be, Marcus Aurelius talked about this, we'll be a prisoner of all of the human mind is a very powerful thing. It's capable of amazing things, but it's also capable of getting trapped in bad thought patterns and trapped in cognitive biases. We discussed this in our last live stream. So the advantage of having that posture of ego death is liberation, is what we're all looking for, is moksha, is liberation, is, in a sense, enlightenment. We can't have that if we're still trapped in the old mode of thinking, which is every interaction with someone is trying to win an ego battle, is trying to prove ourselves right, is trying to satisfy our base animalistic desires. If we have a higher spiritual functioning, which is more towards unity, more towards seeing the God in everything and everyone, like Majnun did. It may seem crazy to someone who's trapped in the old way of thinking, but I think whether that comes to environmental conservation, seeing nature on the outside as part of us being part of nature, and we take care of everything as one, rather than seeing ourselves as a part, or when it comes to social tensions and politics and civil wars, not seeing the other person as some kind of other alien race, but also seeing them as, my Baha'i friends say, the world is but one country and the man and mankind are its citizens. So having that perspective is what we need. And the Baha'is often talk about what we want to try and build is a divine civilization, a new civilization, not
Mm.
just tinkering with this or that policy here. To have that kind of change, we can't be stuck in the old modes of thinking. But the holy texts also tell us, unfortunately, this is quite idealistic if we think that the majority of people are automatically going to, because the majority of people don't care about the Quran. Even Muslims don't
Mm.
read the Quran
The
or the
Quran itself
Bible.
says that.
Exactly. Even in Muhammad's
Yeah.
time, it was considered as an abandoned text because people want
Mm.
miracles, people want fireworks, people want here and now, people want water turned into wine. People just want the majority of people just want the immediate satisfaction. That's the disadvantage of being in the old way of thinking. And how are you going to have a spiritually transformed civilization when you're still trapped in that mode? And this has nothing to do necessarily with atheism or theism or belief in a supernatural or not. I know people on both sides, anecdotally, who have this. It's not necessarily that believing in a creator is going to, if you believe in a creator and your ego is leading you in that charge, the God that you'll find will just be your ego. If you don't believe in a God, but you lead the charge towards science or towards a rationalistic understanding, and the thing leading that charge is your ego, you'll find your ego in
Mm.
whatever belief system, in whatever scientific theory you then become, to have as a centerpiece of your identity and of your worldview. So it's not necessarily that whether people reach for God or don't reach for God. It's what is reaching. Is it the ego that's reaching, or is it the ego that's being naughted, that's being cancelled, and that's being put
Mm.
out?
Yes, right. Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of an idea or saying from Prophet Muhammad: "Your deeds are judged by your motives." It's like your why is essentially very important. Why you do something is true. And so, just kind of, I don't want to go into too much because I want to explore lots of different things. Loads of great, interesting comments in the chat that I want to kind of discuss. Is this idea, as Claire says, belief in the afterlife is necessary to maintaining morality from generation to generation. And that's really interesting because you're talking about Layla and Majnun. You might let's say your Layla is your god. I suppose that's the metaphor in some ways. The thing you're chasing for, the thing that the center of your life and your focus. And so if you have that direction, I think that's really important. I do, yeah, I would agree with that. That's in line with one of the quotes from the Quran I put. That let me try to word it properly, say it properly. Let me click on the. I wonder if it shows links. Oh, it does show. That's good. So you can click on it, by the way, because this document's in the description. It's part of a longer happiness course I've used. But as for him who fears to stand before his Lord, there are two gardens. We can talk about what the two gardens are. But the whole idea of the fear of God is a powerful tool. It's also in the Bible. The fear of God is the root, or the root of all wisdom. So that's an interesting idea. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that the two gardens is something that we've discussed before, and I'm still not entirely sure of my understanding of, well, that Quranic verse or any Quranic verse really. I'm still open to learning, and but I would say in the belief, connecting that to the comment that we see on the screen there, Claire's comment, belief in the afterlife is necessary. Yes, in that, but let's again remind ourselves of the conceptual framework that there is no just one belief and there is no one afterlife. It varies depending on the interpretation is in the eye of the beholder. So for some people, for them to get up in the morning and to behave well and not steal and not be corrupt, they need to believe that there is a fire, literal fire awaiting them, and with Satan and with that punishment, that will then keep them on the straight and narrow. For other people, they just can't accept that. It seems ridiculous to them. So trying to convince them of that will not be, that's not the right medicine to apply to that particular patient. For them, they need to believe more in the idea what I believe hell is and I believe afterlife is. And again, this is a Sufi concept, also a Baha'i concept as well. So it's not only necessarily a mystical concept, but very ordinary Baha'is who wouldn't call themselves mystical believe in this, that hell is just, it's that distant nature from God. That's what you're falling away from God. You're falling, and what is God? That sense of unity, that sense of camaraderie, that sense of cosmic connection. We're falling away from that. We become individuals. We become very greedy. We become very bitty. We become very bitter and guarding and very private and clinging towards our base desires. When you're in that kind of a mode, and when you see the red mist, when you see that kind of, you're jealous of your ex and all of this, those, and we have that toxic feeling, that is hell. That's that burning sensation. And we don't want that. We don't want our interactions to be like that. So every time we fall into that, we fall into hell. Hell is not somewhere, I believe, coming some other dimension that we're going to fall into. It's right here in this very moment. I could do something in this very conversation that could drop me into hell. I could let my stuff down. I can let my emotional control down. I can fail my self-discipline, or I can rise towards heaven. I can see, okay, here's this emotion coming along. I can control it. I can adjust to it, as Marcus Aurelius would do, the Stoics would do, a spiritually balanced teacher, the Sufis would do, without going to extreme. I'm not saying that I've mastered this, no, by any means, but it's an aspiration for me. And if I do that, I can feel quite heavenly. I can feel like, okay, I'm a human being. I've got these compensations I need to do. I need to calibrate these things that my mind, these cognitive biases, my animalistic self, these emotions that rise up within me, but I can see them coming. I've got a prefrontal
Mm.
cortex. I can use my neocortex to see them coming and to adjust myself so I don't fall into those traps. That to me is heaven. That to me is, someone, so I show my
Yeah, I love that.
love.
I think that's such. God, I think it's really useful to have that awareness that you can experience hell and heaven in this life, like
Yeah.
not waiting for something in the next life, constantly reflecting over your feelings and thinking, oh, I did this and this happened. And we are subtle beings. There are, like, being generous has been shown to make you happier, for example, and things like that. So I think that's really useful. And I think I really hope people would find that as a useful takeaway to constantly reflect. I think nowadays, we're in a sort of a consumeristic lifestyle, we've become a bit numb or unaware of our own feelings. We just think, oh, if I get this thing, therefore I'll be happy. So I think that would be, I'll be really happy if people took away this idea that constantly watch your own feelings, see what's actually making you happier rather than what the adverts are telling you will make you happier. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. There's so many really interesting comments. I just kind of I want to make sure I've kind of whizzed through some of the key ideas that I want to cover before I go through those comments. So we talked about love makes you more open-minded, more open to different truths because you're more willing to listen to people. Do you think, just there's kind of a little bit that I feel like we didn't really cover too well maybe yet. Reality, is it good to have is there a reality that can help us navigate the world better? Are there realities that can help us navigate the world better, like being generous makes you happier, for example? Invisible realities, let's say.
Yeah, so I believe that conceptual framework that we discussed before, seeing God in everything, if you need to use that word, seeing unity in everything, not seeing the other person as an other, but just saying we're all tides, we're all waves in the same ocean. The universe is presenting itself as this other person to me, but actually really at the quantum level, we're all the same. Having that kind of that perspective, whatever we need, we human beings are very good at using poetry, at using as you say, mythical realities or our own personal realities to justify ourselves, to motivate ourselves towards a certain action. And that can be a weakness, true. We can tell lies to ourselves, we can invent realities for ourselves. But I would say, let's not have a hierarchy or judge different realities. We spoke about this a bit last time when we were talking about transgenderism. Is that reality or is that not? Is someone just fooling themselves? Ultimately, we'll never know because we can't read minds and we don't know everything. But what we can judge a bit better is how useful is that person's reality to themselves, how helpful is it to themselves and also to people around them. And that can be decided by consultative, democracy and community consultation and decision making. So if someone's reality is harming themselves and harming others, then we can see that, okay, that person needs help. Maybe they need to be isolated, maybe they need help, they need therapy, whatever they need. So, but that conceptual framework of, no, I refuse to give in to, for example, immigrant scapegoating. I work a lot with refugees and asylum seekers. I refuse to give in to the reality that by definition, any kind of, Arab speaking or sounding person or from a third world, darker countries are coming here, they must be coming here to take something from me. If that is a reality that someone is in, and that's been constructed, they weren't born with that. That's been propagandized and fed towards them, in many cases. Then that needs to be deconstructed. On the other hand, having that perspective of, no, everyone's at core just like me. They care about their families, they care about their health and well-being, they care about providing for their children and their children's children. But in that sense, we can see, okay, it's not a nothing, not no rocket science to understand why people may be fleeing a war zone, people may be fleeing persecution, and will be prepared to go anywhere, very reluctantly because they're leaving home, but prepared to go anywhere to seek safety. And if we receive them with love, they're going to act lovingly, more likely to act lovingly towards us. If we receive them with hatred, and you can come in here, but don't take too much of our stuff. And if we receive them with this toxicity, they're going to more likely take advantage, break the law, and not be very loving and hospitable in
Hmm.
turn. And so these are realities that we can choose from, but people sometimes would like to live in a certain reality stubbornly. It's not the way, we don't know better. Often, I think in my
I'm
Gita
gonna,
class, we discuss this
yeah,
quite
go on.
often. It's not that we don't know the right thing to do. We know the right thing to do usually, but it's just that we can't be bothered or we don't want to. It will take too much effort. It's much more pleasing,
Uh,
or much easier to live in a reality where, no, 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 that refugee coming across, they are not like me. They are some kind of evil criminal,
so I want to.
underworld
So
coming
you talked
over.
about this kind of thing about the immigrants already. So that's, but I want to focus on something you just said about the right thing to do. That suggests there is a thing called reality, and so Mike and Claire have been saying similar things. Like he was saying, "Lol, the one true religion." So he's talking about Islam. He's saying, "Oh, it has many meanings, and is happiness eternal doubt and indecision?" So I want to get across, and you can say how you feel about it, but I would agree that there is a truth. We might not know the exact truth, but we should always work towards it. But we shouldn't think that it's okay that anything could be true. Like, I think you're quite sure, Alavari, that we should be kind to immigrants, for example, and that is a truth of some sort. It might not be perfect. Maybe you should balance that kindness to immigrants. Who knows? But the truth is somewhere in that direction for you. And I think that's what these comments are saying. Like, really, should we just be completely eternally confused? Is that okay? Are you saying that we should be eternally confused,
Well, yeah.
Alavari? I'm saying, we shouldn't. Go on, go on,
I
go on.
mean,
What do you think?
considering that I was just earlier on, we were talking about not having these sort of sacred idols or not having these sort of sacred cows or things that are unapproachable, unquestionable. I would like to apply the same thing also to this idea of love, the universal love, indiscriminate love, unconditional love, and breaking the ego and all of this stuff. Because you can quite rightly say, well, let's apply that same critical thinking to what you're saying, and I do, so I don't I believe there's very few absolutes in life, and I don't want to replace one kind of religious, unquestionable belief and faith and worship with another one just because it's pleasing towards me. What a different conceptual framework that I approach life with is what's called a puzzled mindset. It's a puzzle. I'm just trying to solve a puzzle here. I'm not trying to identify, and it's also what the Stoics, I think, approach things with. It's just a puzzle. I have to find a career, I have to find a job, I have to try and solve
Sure.
this
But
immigrant
to put
problem,
you on
whatever
the
it may be.
spot to make it like
Yeah.
more clear, would you say your earlier comment about we all know the truth, or we know what's right,
Mm.
is that at odds with the idea of always being up in being puzzled?
Uh, they
Or have I
they deal
misunderstood something?
they deal with separate arguments. What I was saying about I said most of the time we know what the right thing to do is, as in, it could be our health, going to the gym, it could be, being patient, not losing our temper, counting to 10. These aren't like quantum mechanical far out theories that we need to study for 10 years to understand. That
Sure.
we
So there
understand them
are
from
some
quite early on in
basic
life.
truths that we can hold on to that are useful in life, like the things you just
Yes.
said about
Yeah.
counting to 10, maybe, before you're saying something bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
Cool.
when we're
And
wrong,
yeah.
admitting that we're wrong rather than trying to persist in the lie. We've all been in a situation where we talk to someone about something, we think that we're right, but then we find out, maybe we Google something and we realize that we're wrong, but we don't want to admit that we're wrong to them. So we carry
Mm,
on in that because we don't want to lose that high ground. So things like this, we know
yeah.
we don't need to go through a philosophy course and get a PhD to understand that these things
So you're
are
not
what we
saying
should do.
like some of our viewers are suggesting that I think they think you're saying, but you're
Mm,
not
mm,
saying
mm.
that we should always be confused and puzzled. We should be
I'm saying,
working towards truths.
yeah, yeah. So that's that part about the knowing what to do, but often not doing it. The part about the puzzle mindset, I'm not saying I guess in a sense I'm saying being puzzled, but it's more like I'm trying to solve a puzzle, like solve a jigsaw puzzle. I'm not saying just be confused and be running around like a headless chicken saying I'm confused, because that doesn't help anyone. I'm saying when you solve a jigsaw, you say, well, let me just try and what's the best? You need to have an algorithm, you need to have a way of solving it and a conceptual framework. And if that doesn't work, set that aside and get another conceptual framework and just keep going until you find a conceptual framework that helps you solve the puzzle. So if we're trying to solve the puzzle of why are there thousands of people fleeing to the UK from war-torn countries, I don't try and see that as a big clash of civilizations or existential threats, or they're these sort of rats that are coming over here, and all of these, again, the emotion is getting in there, the
But
ego is
having said
getting in there.
that, you've got
It's
perspective. But part of
Yeah,
this whole thing that I've been talking about, if we have love for the people who have a different perspective, for example, they say, "Oh, they're taking our jobs," and we have sympathy for them, and we go,
absolutely.
"Oh,
Yeah,
okay, I see what you're saying. I mean, I care about the immigrants, but I also care about you that you don't have a job."
yes,
And you feel that way, and
you
maybe
feel
I
that
can
way,
help you
exactly.
get it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and maybe I can help you get your job, or maybe there's some truth in what you're saying a little bit. There's
sure.
different
Yeah.
truths, and we can try.
Mm.
So yeah, how do you feel about that? Just that, and
And
then we'll
that's
talk
why I
about.
said, yeah, and that's why I said when we talked about the different realities, in that person's reality, that's true for them. We can't, we may try to establish what an objective reality is, that's a different discussion. But in that person's reality, if we want to try and help them or guide them or change them, and again, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So if they're not ready to be taught or guided, then it's not, I don't think we should be trying to interfere with them, but at least we should understand them. So that's why I said, let's not have a hierarchy of reality saying my reality is better than yours. If we're trying to understand someone, what is your perspective? What is your reality? What are you seeing? And then not judging them, not saying this is and that's where the puzzle mindset comes in. So if the puzzle is, why do native peoples often reject the immigrants coming over or try to resist them? That's a puzzle. I'm starting out saying, let's try and solve that puzzle. I'm not starting out saying, and I agree with you. Okay, well, here's this racist native population. Why are they so racist? Or why are they? It's a we want to. That's when the emotions get in. That's when the ego gets in. That's in the way. It's our country, and they're stealing it from us. As a neutral observer, I want to try and say, okay, well, who is this person? What do they care about? They care about their families, they care about their house, they care about their schooling and children and their ability to provide for their family. And why do they feel, exactly as you say, why do they feel that's been taken away from them? Because they look around and they see, well, we used to have a swimming pool, we used to have a library, we used to have, a park there, but now we don't. That's been taken away. And they
Mm,
probably correlate that with immigrants arriving in their neighborhood, and they correlate
mm.
and they do 1 + 1 = and they get the
And
wrong
if we're
answer.
truly being open-minded, we might say it might be a bit condescending to say they're only feeling it. There might be some truth in it as well. That's
Yeah,
part
no,
of
yeah,
love, being
sure.
open to it as well. Okay, cool. I just want to say so many fantastic, really interesting comments that we didn't have time to talk to. We're not totally wrapping up here, but I think a really important part of what we're doing here is the humanity of being interested in each other, not these kind of discussion debate kind of things, which can be kind of like an intellectual game and whatever. So yeah, tell me about how you're doing, Alvaro. You're telling me something wrong with your foot, or what happened?
Yeah, I was no, I'm just having to rest it up today. I was at LGBT Pride, London Pride March yesterday, organizing our kind of marching block. So yeah, probably went overboard a bit too much. And it was a really hot day and for London standards. And yeah, so just trying to take it easy today. But
So how
luckily,
did you
it's
damage your
nothing
foot?
serious. Nothing. It's just a little kind of. It just got quite sore, and I think maybe during morning yoga today, I just kind of twisted it a bit. But it should be fine tomorrow, I think. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really so. I mean, I know you say it's nothing serious. I'm sure your foot won't be amputated, but that doesn't mean we don't talk about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And also, it's like even if it's not the pain that we're interested in necessarily. It could be like maybe you're having a great time. I want to hear about the great time, even though I'm against the whole LGBT stuff, whatever. In principle, I have lots of friends that I've a good relationship with who are in that, who are lesbian and gay, whatever, right? So it's not like I'm hating on anybody. The point is, the question I'm asking, I guess, is, yeah. So what were you doing that was so, kept you so busy that you injured your foot at that that gay pride event?
I was one of the organizers of our group that attended it. There's many groups, over 100 groups. They march over the whole day. This is my fourth or fifth time going. And yeah, just having to, some people, it's their first time. They don't know what to do. We hold signs, and we meet new people. We hand out leaflets and badges and things. So just a lot of organizational admin stuff that goes into it, and then having to carry things back and forth from the office to the marching location. And yeah, but it was fine. And yeah, met some new friends, caught up with old friends. It was a lovely day. One of the happiest days I've had in the past several months. So yeah,
Oh wow!
spent some time
Okay,
with some
cool.
special people, including many Jordanians. So I'm sure you'll be happy about that.
Okay. I mean, I know there's a lot of gay Jordanians here. I went on to
Well, the
Tinder.
Jordanians I was with, only one of them was gay. Well, she's half
Oh,
Jordanian
okay.
anyway.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the
Yeah,
others
yeah.
weren't, but they joined us after the march.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, tell me about that. I mean, I think Jordanians are really friendly, lovely people. They don't all have to be, but at least here they are. So tell me maybe a bit more about that. And maybe I think I should share. I've been to different kind of gay events and whatever. Um, and I don't have to agree with gay people or lesbian people, whatever you call it, to have good conversations, interesting conversations. And also, I think it's very important to, this is like the whole thing we were talking about earlier on. Like, if you have love for people, then you break boundaries, you understand more people, they understand you more. But if you are like what we have unfortunately at the moment is a lot of hate, then we're not learning from each other. We're not really making progress in our lives. And yeah. So anyway, suppose just as kind of a bit background, so people might be thinking, how comes I'm not like condemning you for being at such an event, right? Yeah, tell me about like you said it was one of the happiest days of the year or whatever you were saying. Tell me, if you're unfiltering, this is another thing I ask my kids to do and everybody I know. Tell me like the first thought that comes to your mind And this is part of the introspection thing that I was talking about that you really enjoy. Like the first thing that comes to your mind, and it probably sounds really silly, but what would it be that made you really happy?
Sorry, what's the highlight from yesterday? Or
Yeah, but try not to think too much about it. Like what was an immediate,
Mhm.
tell me a feeling or an idea or an image in your head that made you happy. Like if you're remembering back,
All right.
and it's usually something really small. That's why people
Yeah, yeah.
don't usually,
Uh,
usually say it.
that's quite easy. Yeah, actually, the march was neither here nor there. It was okay, but it was just as good as previous years. But just in the evening, spending some time with special people, going to the park, yeah, connecting, sharing
I
food.
can imagine that. I can imagine that. Like in the park in this British summer, when you actually have summer, it can be really cool. Like you can see people are happier. You have interesting conversations walking in the park. I think
Exactly.
one of the really undervalued things are just conversations. We think it's all this expensive stuff. Like I go with my kids to restaurants and whatever, and it's really, rarely ever the food that we care about. It's like the
The
sitting down
company.
and yeah, the company. I used to say, and I still do say, the company makes the food taste better.
Hmm. Couldn't
Yeah,
agree more. And I'm very
yeah,
lucky to have some lovely company in my
yeah.
life.
That's good. As we say, Alhamdulillah, all praise belongs to God. That's why. That's a Muslim habit, but I think it's a
Yeah,
good general habit. Yeah.
it is.
Like for all the good things, we count the good things, we feel more lucky. Count your lucky stars would be an English phrase, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, there's Islamic teaching on the Quran. I think if you are grateful, God will give you more. I think there's a practical reality in that. In that the more grateful you are, the more aware of the things you are to be grateful for, and then you focus on them more and getting those important things more. Like, you know what I mean? I think, but if you're completely
Mhm.
ungrateful, you're unaware of all the amazing things you have, and then you don't take advantage of them. That kind of thing. I think there's a lot of practical realities behind a lot of these sayings and teachings. So awesome! I'm really glad to hear that. And how long do you think you'll be back to normal on your feet?
Well, I'm resting the whole of today. Luckily, I can do a lot of things from without leaving, my room. So again, a point of privilege. So
Yeah.
should be no time at all in the next couple of days. Just not as young as I used to be, I suppose.
You beginning to feel old now. You're
I felt
33
old,
yet?
33.
You okay? When did you get?
My
Maybe
friends
you
tell
should
me I
share.
was, my friends tell me I was born middle-aged. So I've been middle-aged for I think 15 years. My body's just
Oh, that's
catching up with my soul.
fascinating. That's fascinating. I say that's fascinating. Um, I think I was very serious when I was 15, and ever since, I think I've been. I haven't been able to get older. Just in the sense that I was
I think
really
most of
like,
that's true. Yeah, that's true for me as
yeah.
well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So
In fact,
you
it's
feel
only
your
after that I
friends say
discovered
one thing, but you
spirituality.
feel,
I was a
yeah,
very serious militant atheist when I was 15, so
yeah,
yeah, full of haughtiness and took myself way too seriously.
yeah. That's fascinating, and I feel like I'm more relaxed now, even though
Hmm.
I think I'm more serious
Me too.
practically. Like I didn't do live streams, I didn't do whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm more relaxed about the results. Maybe
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, I'm doing my duty. I didn't. The person doesn't have to agree, and a more long-term sort of vision and stuff like that. So because I think when we're younger, maybe we want to change the world immediately, and that's really stressful. We want to fix our lives immediately, and it's really hard to have that perspective, isn't it? I mean, it's easier for me to say that as an older person. It's like, oh, don't worry, it'll take time, but I think when you're like 16 or something, and 1 year is much longer, isn't it? It's like 1/16th of your life or something.
Hmm.
So I can appreciate that. And you've got so much to achieve. You don't have all the money you want to have the freedom which you might have when you're rich or more wealthy when you're older. And so me and you, we've worked a little bit on our careers, and we've got the freedom to work from home like you do, I think, a lot. So yeah, I can totally understand other younger people's perspectives. All right. Always great talking to you. Sometimes we're, you know, uh disagreeing more. And I thought it'd make a change. We might have a topic we could agree more on. But both are really important to kind of challenge and grow and all that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate Alavari for giving up an hour of your time every single week so consistently. It's really kind of you, because I'm sure your intention is to benefit all people, not just for the sake of random conversation. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Khalid.
Have a great week.
Assalamu
Bye.
alaikum.
Salam.
Thank
Wa
you.
alaikum salam. Peace be upon you too.